There comes a moment in your life when you begin to feel something shifting, not outside you, but inside you. A quiet pressure in your spirit, a restlessness you cannot explain, a longing for clarity that you can't ignore anymore. It shows up in the midnight hours, in the early morning silence, in the gaps between conversations, in the moments when your heart feels tired of guessing and your soul is desperate for direction. You can't name it at first, but it feels like God is calling you deeper, calling you to hear Him more clearly, more directly, more consistently than ever before. But every time you try to listen, something gets in the way. Your mind feels crowded. Your emotions feel loud. Your thoughts feel heavy. Your past interrupts you. Your fears argue with you. Your anxieties drown out your desires. Your insecurities speak louder than your prayers. It's like God is whispering, but everything else is shouting. And the more you try to tune in, the more you realize hearing God is not difficult because God is silent. Hearing God is difficult because your soul is noisy. You want clarity, but your heart is cluttered. You want direction, but your mind is overwhelmed. You want guidance, but your emotions keep hijacking the signal. You want peace, but fear keeps interrupting the connection. You want answers, but distractions keep dragging you away from the truth. And the longer you live, the more obvious it becomes. The real battle is not hearing God. The real battle is removing what blocks you from hearing Him. Because God has never stopped speaking. He has been guiding, nudging, warning, and comforting you your entire life. But the volume of His voice is never the issue. It's the volume of everything else. You weren't created to live in confusion. You weren't created to guess your way through life. You weren't created to be spiritually deaf, emotionally lost, or directionless. You weren't created to keep questioning yourself, doubting your intuition, or second-guessing every decision. You were created to hear God clearly, confidently, consistently, intimately. But to hear Him clearly, you must first confront what is drowning Him out. Not the devil, not the world, not other people, but the noise inside you. And if you're honest, you already know the truth. There are things within you that God has been asking you to release, things that once felt normal, familiar, even comforting, but are now suffocating your spiritual sensitivity. For God to speak clearly, something inside you must quiet down. Something inside you must shift. Something inside you must break. Something inside you must be surrendered. And the first sign that God is calling you deeper is that He begins to expose the things that interfere with your hearing. You'll notice it when conversations drain you more than usual. You'll notice it when certain habits suddenly feel heavy. You'll notice it when the things that once satisfied you now feel empty. You'll notice it when you feel emotionally cluttered, but spiritually hungry. You'll notice it when you feel overstimulated, but undernourished. You'll notice it when your desires clash with your spirit. You'll notice it when old patterns become unbearable. This is God saying, your next season requires a quieter soul, a focused mind, a healed heart, a purified desire, a rested spirit. He is not punishing you, He is preparing you. Because every time God prepares to speak more clearly, He first prepares the environment of your heart. He removes the interference. He adjusts your spiritual frequency. He softens your inner world. He realigns your priorities. He dismantles the internal structures that kept you confused for years. He isn't trying to make your life harder. He's trying to make His voice clearer. But clarity always requires surrender. And surrender begins with honesty, being honest about what's been blocking you, what's been distracting you, what's been overwhelming you, what's been whispering louder than God, what's been shaping your emotions more than truth, what's been directing your decisions more than wisdom. You cannot hear God clearly while clinging to the very things that confuse you. You cannot hear God clearly if you're still addicted to noise. The noise of comparison, the noise of fear, the noise of overthinking, the noise of people-pleasing, the noise of insecurity, the noise of regret, the noise of self-doubt, the noise of internal chaos you've been carrying for years. And this is where the battle becomes real, not outside you, but within you. Because it's easy to blame the world for your confusion. It's harder to admit you've allowed certain habits and attitudes to stay longer than they should have. It's easy to assume God is quiet. It's harder to admit you haven't been listening. It's easy to pray for a sign. It's harder to silence the noise that makes signs impossible to see. The truth is, there are things you must quit. Things you must release, things you must detach from, emotionally and spiritually, if you want to step into a life where God's voice becomes unmistakably clear. Not because God is conditional, but because your spirit is sensitive. There are certain mental habits that cloud your intuition, certain emotional cycles that distort your discernment, certain relationships that drain your clarity, certain desires that pull you away from truth, certain coping mechanisms that numb your spiritual senses, certain fears that dominate your inner world, certain lies that drown out God's whispers. A cluttered soul cannot hear a clear God. And God loves you too much to let you stay cluttered. This is why He starts stirring discomfort. This is why He starts convicting your heart. This is why He starts disrupting your routines. This is why He removes your appetite for distractions. This is why He interrupts cycles that once felt normal to you. This is why He reveals the emotional attachments that blind you. This is why He exposes the internal noise you learn to live with. Because you can't carry spiritual noise into a season that requires spiritual clarity. And God is calling you into clarity, not partial clarity, not emotional clarity, not momentary clarity, but sustained clarity. Clarity that guides decisions, clarity that protects your heart, clarity that strengthens your intuition, clarity that aligns you with purpose, clarity that keeps you out of cycles, clarity that makes you sensitive to His whispers, clarity that transforms how you live, choose, think, love, and move. But every version of clarity requires sacrifice. You cannot hear God clearly while feeding the very things that blind you. You cannot hear God clearly while entertaining what He's asking you to release. You cannot hear God clearly while holding on to emotional noise. You cannot hear God clearly while ignoring the tension in your spirit. And this is where the journey begins, not with hearing God, but with recognizing what's been blocking His voice. You start noticing the internal battles you never dealt with, You start recognizing the emotions you've been suppressing. You start seeing the patterns you've carried unconsciously. You start uncovering the lies you internalized growing up. You start acknowledging the habits that damage your clarity. And when the layers begin to peel back, you discover something shocking. The loudest voices pulling you away from God aren't external. They're internal. Your fear speaks louder than His truth. Your anxiety speaks louder than His peace. Your insecurities speak louder than His identity. Your regret speaks louder than His forgiveness. Your past speaks louder than His promises. Your self-doubt speaks louder than His calling. Your stress speaks louder than His presence. And God says, these are the things you must quit, not because I demand perfection, but because I want connection. He wants to speak to you clearly. He wants to guide you deeply. He wants to reveal things you've never seen. He wants to strengthen you from the inside out. He wants to shape your future with clarity, not confusion. He wants to lead you without interference. He wants to restore what noise has been destroying. But He cannot pour clarity into a heart overflowing with clutter. So part 1 is not about quitting the world. It's about confronting the world you've built inside yourself. The world of noise, the world of emotional chaos, the world of overthinking, the world of guilt, the world of old wounds, the world of fears that feel familiar, the world of beliefs that were never true. This is where God begins the transformation, not with external silence, but with internal surrender. Because hearing God clearly does not begin with your ears, it begins with your heart. And in the next part, God is going to show you exactly what needs to be released, so that the clarity you've been praying for can finally become the clarity you live with. There comes a point in your journey when God doesn't just expose the noise inside you. He starts pointing directly at the things in your life that are blocking His voice. Not subtly, not gently, but clearly, because your next season depends on it. And even though you may have ignored those internal nudges before, you can't ignore them now. Something in you knows this is the moment. This is the turning point. This is the chapter where clarity becomes non-negotiable. You've prayed for direction. You've asked for answers. You've begged for peace. You've cried for guidance. You've wanted confirmation so badly. But God cannot guide a soul that refuses to let go of what's clouding it. And the truth is, there are things in your life you've been carrying so long that you forgot they were never meant to stay. Things that made sense in past seasons but are now suffocating you. Habits that once felt harmless but are silently damaging your spirit. Patterns that once protected you but now imprison you. Attachments that once felt comforting but now distort your discernment. And God is saying, if you want to hear me clearly, these are the things you must quit immediately. You can feel it. You can sense it. You can hear it deep in your conscience. He's been whispering it for months, maybe years. He's been stirring discomfort in areas you once tolerated. He's been elevating your awareness. He's been sharpening your sensitivity to His presence. But now, He's speaking louder. Because clarity doesn't come by accident. Clarity comes from surrender. And surrender always begins with release. Some things must die, so your spirit can live. And the first thing God is calling you to quit is the thing that has stolen more clarity from people than anything else overthinking the endless mental loops where you replay the same scenario 100 times but never gain peace. The what-ifs, the should-haves, the maybes, the "I don't know if I'm making the right decision," the mental spirals that make your head loud and your spirit quiet. Overthinking is not wisdom. It's mental noise. It's spiritual interference. It's the place where fear becomes logic. It's the place where anxiety disguises itself as caution. It's the place where your mind convinces you that confusion is safer than clarity because clarity demands action. Overthinking drains you emotionally, spiritually, mentally. It keeps you stuck between two worlds, what God is calling you to do and what fear is convincing you to avoid. It makes you hesitate when you should step forward. It blinds you to the obvious. It drowns out the whisper of God because your thoughts are too loud. God is not the God of confusion. Confusion is the result of divided loyalties. Part of you wants God. Another part wants control. And as long as you're trying to control outcomes, your mind will never silence itself enough to hear God. This is why God is saying, quit overthinking. Trust me, the way you trusted your worry. Because at some point you have to choose, are you going to follow fear's voice or God's? But overthinking isn't the only thing keeping you from clarity. You also have to let go of unhealthy emotional attachments to people, to memories, to narratives, to identities that no longer serve your future. There are connections in your life that drain your discernment every time you get close to them. You know this because every time you talk to them, you walk away less sure of yourself. Every time you let them back in, you lose your peace. Every time you depend on them emotionally, your spirit feels cloudy. Not every attachment is evil, but every unhealthy attachment is expensive. It doesn't cost you money. It costs you sensitivity. It costs you clarity. It costs you focus. It costs you energy. It costs you the ability to hear God clearly. You cannot hear God if you're too busy listening to the wrong voices. Some people exist in your life not because they help you grow, but because you've grown used to their presence. Comfort is not confirmation. Familiarity is not alignment. And emotional attachment is not spiritual agreement. You can love someone deeply and still know they are blocking your connection with God. You can care for someone sincerely and still know they are pulling you away from who you're becoming. You can want the best for someone and still realize they cannot walk with you into your next season. Some attachments must be loosened. Some attachments must be redefined. Some attachments must be released completely. Because clarity requires room. And right now, your soul doesn't have enough room for God's direction and someone else's dysfunction. Then there's the noise, not the noise of the world, but the noise within your emotional life. The rushed decisions, the urgency that isn't from God, the self-imposed pressure to be everything for everyone, the pace that leaves no breathing space for reflection, the emotional overwhelm that keeps your spirit restless. Many people can't hear God because their lives are too loud, not audibly, but spiritually. Their schedule is loud. Their stress is loud. Their anxiety is loud. Their expectations are loud. Their commitments are loud. Their distractions are loud. And in all that loudness, God's whispers get lost. You cannot hear God when you're always rushing. God speaks in stillness, not speed. He speaks in peace, not pressure. He speaks in quiet conviction, not chaos. But your soul cannot be still until you quit the things that make your life constantly noisy. And then, there is the identity issue. One of the biggest blockers to hearing God is holding on to an old version of yourself. The version shaped by insecurity. The version shaped by trauma. The version shaped by fear of failure. The version shaped by the need for validation. The version shaped by past mistakes. The version shaped by labels that never belonged to you. You cannot hear God's guidance while living in an identity He never gave you. Old identities distort new instructions. Some people are still trying to hear God as the person they used to be, instead of the person they are becoming. They approach God from wounds instead of wisdom, from shame instead of confidence, from fear instead of faith, from insecurity instead of identity. And God is saying, how can I speak to the future version of you if you keep clinging to the past version? Your old self cannot lead you into a new season. Your old thinking cannot interpret a new word. Your old reactions cannot navigate a new direction. You must quit the version of yourself that God healed you from. And sometimes the hardest things to quit are not habits or people, but mindsets that have lived inside you for years. Mindsets that say, I'm not enough. I always mess up. I don't deserve clarity. God doesn't speak to people like me. I should figure everything out by myself. I'm too broken to hear God. I'm too confused to trust myself. These lies build walls around your spirit, and God is tearing them down one by one. Because hearing God clearly begins with believing you're worthy of hearing Him. And finally, one of the most dangerous blockers to clarity is emotional clutter. The unresolved feelings, the bottled-up pain, the inner tension you keep pushing down, the resentment you never released, the anxiety you never processed, the disappointments you never admitted. Emotional clutter acts like static in your spirit. You try to pray, but the weight inside you distracts you. You try to ask for guidance, but worry keeps interrupting. You try to listen, but your thoughts are too tangled. You try to trust God, but your heart is still carrying wounds that distort your perception. God is not silent. Your soul is crowded. He's trying to speak, but your emotions are interrupting Him. He's trying to guide you, but your inner turmoil keeps drowning Him out. He's trying to lead you, but your pain keeps taking the wheel. And the longer you carry emotional clutter, the harder it becomes to trust divine clarity. This is why God leads you to moments of reflection, moments of silence, moments of slowing down, not to punish you, but to heal you, to help you detox your soul, to give you space to release what's been stored up, to allow your heart to breathe again, to make room for His voice to land. Because guidance cannot land on a crowded heart, and wisdom cannot grow in emotional dust. So part 2 is about the things you must quit, not to impress God, but to hear Him. Quit the noise. Quit the attachments. Quit the overthinking. Quit the old identity. Quit the inner chaos. Quit the emotional clutter. These are the barriers between you and the clarity you desperately want. Quit them, and the voice of God will no longer sound distant. It will sound familiar. There comes a moment quiet, almost sacred, when everything inside you finally settles. Not because life suddenly got easier, not because all your questions got answered, but because something in your spirit shifted. The noise that once filled your mind begins to lose its authority. The chaos that once controlled your emotions no longer grips you. The fears that once defined your decisions begin to dissolve. And in that stillness, something beautiful happens. You begin to hear God clearly, not vaguely, not occasionally, not accidentally, but clearly, consistently, like a steady voice rising inside you, guiding you, comforting you, warning you, aligning you. This is the part no one tells you about the part after the surrender, after the quitting, after the emotional detox. The part where clarity becomes not just an experience, but a lifestyle, a way of being, a way of moving, a way of living that feels almost unfamiliar, because for the first time in your life, your soul isn't fighting against itself. And when you reach this place, you realize hearing God clearly is not something you chase. It's something you become. It's not something outside you. It's something within you. It's not something God withholds. It's something you grow into. Because the truth is, God has always been speaking. But clarity comes when the noise inside you finally bows to truth. And once God has room to speak, everything begins to shift. Your decisions become different. Your reactions become different. Your relationships become different. Your boundaries become different. Your confidence becomes different. Your energy becomes different. Your purpose becomes clearer. Your path becomes straighter. It's like someone lifted a veil from your spirit, and suddenly you can see what you couldn't see for years. This is what happens when God becomes the loudest voice in your life. You no longer make decisions out of fear. You make decisions out of alignment. You no longer run to people for validation. You run to God for direction. You no longer anxiously search for signs. You recognize God's whisper instantly. You no longer question your worth. You move with a quiet, grounded confidence. You no longer replay old mistakes. You walk with a renewed mind and a healed heart. It's not that problems disappear, it's that confusion does. Because when you can hear God clearly, worry loses power. Fear loses power. Overthinking loses power. Guilt loses power. Urgency loses power. Chaos loses power. You become anchored not in your emotions, but in truth. Your spirit becomes steady in a world that is anything but steady. Your mind becomes calm in circumstances that once overwhelmed you. Your heart becomes peaceful in situations that used to break you. You no longer have to guess your way through life. You no longer have to force outcomes. You no longer have to exaggerate control. You no longer have to chase clarity. You carry it. And what's even more powerful is this. When you can hear God clearly, you stop trying to be your own savior. You stop trying to figure out every detail. You stop trying to fix everyone around you. You stop trying to predict the future. You stop trying to manipulate outcomes. You stop trying to rely on your limited understanding. Because clarity teaches you trust. Clarity teaches you patience. Clarity teaches you surrender. Clarity teaches you that God is not just ahead of you, He is within you, guiding every step. And here's the part most people overlook. God does not just speak to give you information. He speaks to transform your identity. When you hear God clearly, you begin to see yourself differently. You begin to understand why you survived what you survived. You begin to understand why certain doors closed. You begin to understand why your spirit didn't fit in old environments. You begin to understand why God separated you from certain people. You begin to understand why He dried up your appetite for things that once controlled you. You begin to understand why He disrupted your comfort. Because confusion hides your identity. Clarity reveals it. And when identity becomes clear, direction follows naturally. You stop fighting who God is making you become. You stop resisting what He's calling you to do. You stop fearing the next chapter. You stop living small. You stop betraying yourself to keep others comfortable. You finally understand your own voice, the voice God placed within you. And when you know your voice, you know God's voice. Because His voice is the one that reminds you. You are chosen. You are protected. You are guided. You are seen. You are enough. You are called. You are not alone. You are mine. Clarity turns these from words into reality. But something even deeper happens when clarity becomes your lifestyle. Your intuition sharpens, not the anxious kind, not the fearful kind, but the Spirit-led kind. You begin to sense when something is wrong before it happens. You begin to feel peace pull you toward the right decision. You begin to feel conviction pull you away from harmful ones. You begin to notice the difference between your emotions and God's guidance. You begin to recognize when someone's spirit does not align with yours. You begin to catch red flags you used to ignore. You begin to sense opportunities that are divine, not distracting. People will say, "How did you know?" And you'll respond, "I didn't, but my spirit did." Because clarity makes you spiritually aware. It makes you emotionally awake, makes you mentally sharp. It makes you relationally discerning. You start seeing past words into intentions. You start reading atmospheres. You start recognizing manipulation instantly. You start detecting draining environments without needing an explanation. You start valuing peace over entertainment, purpose, over people-pleasing alignment, over approval. This is what it means to walk with clarity. And it doesn't stop there. Clarity also produces something you may not have felt in years: confidence. Not arrogance, not image, not loud self-belief, but a quiet, steady, unshakable confidence that comes from knowing you're guided. You stop panicking about outcomes. You stop questioning your worth. You stop overanalyzing every situation. You stop needing everyone to understand your decisions. You stop fearing the future because you feel the presence of God in the present. This confidence reshapes the way you live. You move differently. You speak differently. You choose differently. You react differently. You stop settling. You stop shrinking. You stop apologizing for growing. You stop tolerating things that drain you. Because when you hear God clearly, you begin to see yourself clearly. And when you see yourself clearly, you begin to build a life that aligns with who you are becoming not who you used to be. Your relationships evolve. Your boundaries strengthen. Your standards rise. Your calling activates. Your gifts awaken. Your spirit expands. You become someone new, not by force, not by pressure, but by clarity. And at some point you look back and realize you're not living in confusion anymore. You're not drowning in anxiety anymore. You're not stuck in cycles anymore. You're not calling chaos normal anymore. You're not chasing answers, you're receiving them. You're not feeling lost. You're guided. Your soul feels different, steadier, lighter, calmer, wiser, stronger, quieter, clearer. This is the life God wanted for you all along. A life where His voice is not distant, it's daily. A life where His guidance is not mysterious, it's intimate. A life where His presence is not occasional, it's constant. A life where His clarity is not rare, it's your reality. And now you know the truth. Hearing God clearly is not a gift for a chosen few. It's the birthright of a soul that's willing to become quiet enough to listen.